gotta go big or go home. We're down to the gold. Never been a better time to put it all on the line. Ooh, yeah. Time to put it all on the line. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of RumberPod. It's your hosts here, Spencer and Ryan. We talked a little bit about the mission statement of the show, so we don't see any need to mess around today. We're just going to get straight into our discussion and kicking off a series of just discussing kind of the direction and futures of every team and every division. And today we'll be starting with the many feel touted, AFC North, including the likes of the Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. A lot of good teams here, a lot of good players, a lot of great additions, a lot of great off-season content for us to get to here. I know we're a little late. We're just starting off. But Ryan, tell me, man, how's your day going? Are you ready to delve in here?
Oh, you know I'm ready, baby. I've been ready. Excited to get this podcast started. Excited to kick it off with a very exciting division. As we were discussing earlier, this is, I think, going to be an incredibly competitive division. I think that, people have certainly come around to the idea that it's going to be one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive division in the NFL. So I think this is a really good place for us to start. Excited to get to it.
It's an interesting place to be with this division because, there was a point there where we kind of felt like it was the Bengals and the Ravens and really everybody else. But it's kind of turned around. And like you said, I think there is a strong argument, possibly the most competitive division in the league. I know the NFC East gets a lot of love for that. But generally, I think that when you consider really all the additions and the improvement that these staffs have made to their rosters, there's no reason this can't be in contention for that. But anyway, I think that's enough ado about what we're getting into. We're going to lead off with the Bengals here. And obviously, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. That's what all the fantasy junkies want to see anyway, right? So why not? So kicking off with the Bengals, right? If my depth chart will load here. Obviously, we have Joe Burrow at quarterback. Really doesn't get better than that in terms of youth, in terms of just raw skill set. Just a really, really high-level player that's very early into his career and getting better. And a lot of people would question if that's even possible with what we've seen from Joe Burrow up to this point.
I think that Joe Burrow is only going to improve with getting more reps and getting more snaps in the league. And I think that it's a very real possibility that we could see a Joe Burrow MVP season, especially in a division that's going to be so competitive. And with the weapons that he has and the consistent improvement that he's shown over the last couple of seasons coming off of the ACL, I think that, it's going to be really, really a great year for Joe Burrow. And like you said, unbelievably, I think he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. So I think it's about as great of a quarterback situation as you could ask for, especially in a AFC that is incredibly loaded up at quarterback talent.
Not at all. And I think it was just last year, if you recall, Burrow was saying, I don't feel that I've hit my ceiling at all. I think there's a lot more that I can offer from a mobility standpoint. I would love to see, especially when you consider, and that's a great segue into what we're going to talk about next, is a struggling Bengals run game. And I mean, struggling is maybe a bit of a reach. They're a functional offense without a doubt, but struggling in terms of just consistent production, right? I think this maybe is a microcosm of a few things. The offensive line struggles have contributed to this, and Joe Mixon is a tad inconsistent at times, although his top end is very high for a running back. But yeah, so I mean, obviously I don't feel personally that the Bengals are in a position where they're really relying on Mixon. A lot of people feel Mixon may not even be returning after all these legal issues that are popping up, but we don't get into that. We're talking about talent. Obviously, there was the addition of Chase Brown. I know he was a semi-late round selection. I liked him out of Syracuse, I believe. Chase Brown, he's not necessarily going to be your bell cow or just a obvious step-in replacement for Mixon necessarily, but can he give you something close to what P. Ryan gave you in the prior years when it was needed? I think there's a decent chance of that. They probably need a little bit better of a rotation than that, if I had to guess. But Chase Brown can be serviceable, and at the end of the day, we know the bread and butter for this team is the passing game.
Absolutely. Chase Brown out of Illinois, by the way.
Illinois, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's an accused
yeah,
running
certainly.
back I'm confusing him with.
Certainly, I think this is a pass-first offense. I mean, how do you not with, I would say, the best wide receiver trio in the league, and with Joe Burrow at the helm, it's certainly a pass-first offense. And, certainly Joe Mixon is downhill runner. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think where he got a lot of value, and especially where P. Ryan got a lot of value, was in pass blocking. And that'll be interesting to see, if Chase Brown is going to be able to step up and be that guy in a lot of third down situations where you're facing a lot of heavy blitz, a lot of decent front sevens. Can you pick up the blitz, and can you protect Joe Burrow? Because that's ultimately been the biggest downfall, I think, of the offense is, making sure that Joe Burrow is not going to get creamed. It is not going to get sacked 6 times in a Super Bowl ever again.
Well, that's a pretty logical segue into, obviously, their wide receiving core here. Kind of what's driving this roster, so to speak. I mean, you've obviously got the prolific duo of Chase and Higgins. A couple of additions, new guys, probably mostly depth, although I think Charlie Jones can actually be a pretty high-end slot coming right out. I'm not going to guess college again because apparently I'm not ready to go for that. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he was Purdue out there with Aiden O'Connell at one point. But, Charlie Jones got really good footwork. He's not a uber athlete by any means, but rarely do you see these late round slots have that kind of skill sets. It's all mental. It's all knowing the soft zones and just a good route running, and he brings that. They also bring in Andre Ilyasovas. He was kind of more of a developmental prospect, but as your number 4, you could do a lot worse. And I actually like a lot of the selections that they've made in this draft going into that. Any thoughts on the wide receiving core, Ryan?
I mean, they're just going to keep producing. I think that it's the best trio in the league. I think the chemistry that's been built between Chase, Higgins, and Boyd through the last few seasons, making a lot of deep playoff runs. It's only looking up, in my opinion.
100%.
Especially, you've got Joe Burrow consistently improving. You've got a lot of playoff experience. You built a lot of chemistry with this wide receiver core. I think that, the sky is truly the limit. I think, you never know. It's like we were talking about earlier, where it was like a year earlier than people thought they would be making a legit Super Bowl run, and they made that legit Super Bowl run. And then since then, they've just consistently been great. And I don't see anything different, especially adding some slot depth, get some rotational guys in there that are really good, got good hands, great route runners, find the soft spots of the field, especially in these defenses that like to run a lot of zone. Great additions, great
and that's
rotational
an important
guys.
thing to note, right? That's an important thing to note when I'm not necessarily talking up the likes of Charlie Jones and Ilyasovas, but when you're adding them to what they already have,
Exactly.
It's definitely a promising kind of boon to what was already a strength for this roster. Getting into offensive line, I want to talk a little bit about the addition of Orlando Brown. I think that's a really big and important talking point for this season. They were relying on kind of just a rotation of guys in some respect. Obviously, you were getting decent play out of Jackson Carman, but he will likely step into more of a swing tackle role or possibly be pushed over to right. I mean, it's going to be at the discretion of the coaching staff. Jonah Williams was the relatively high selection a while back. He hasn't necessarily worked out as a tackle for them. They've been playing him at guard, I believe, although the depth chart I'm seeing here has him listed as the right tackle starter. So it'd be interesting to see whether they roll out Carman as the young buck to go alongside Brown. There's obviously that constant criticism following Brown, which I find a bit overblown, to be honest. I know a lot of people's opinion is he's a right tackle masquerading as a left. Well, the Chiefs surely didn't think so. They didn't want to pay him because he wanted a lot of money. But it seemed like not necessarily a spite move per se, but it was kind of like, well, I'm going to just get the best deal I can get. And the Bengals believe in Brown the same way the Chiefs did, and the Chiefs just went to a championship with Brown as their left tackle. So if that's masquerading, then give me a masquerader at left tackle.
100%.
I think Orlando Brown, as all of the struggles we were discussing in the run game, especially, he offsets. I mean, he's going to make a guy like Chase Brown, who's surely he is a talented running back, but he's going to make him look a lot better in his first year, in my opinion. And just the overall improved play of the Bengals. I mean, they had signed Alex Kappa not too long ago as well, and he had a good first year with them. Ted Karras is respectable at center. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, they had a draft pick as well. Oh, we didn't even mention Lyle Collins, right? I mean, Lyle Collins had a bit of a tough year, but at the end of the day, we know this guy's level of talent. He might very well end up as the right tackle starter. But the good thing is there is a lot of positional versatility for all these guys. They can rotate in and out of the lineup in different spots for a lot of these guys. So it'll be interesting to see whether, like you're saying, can they pull together some better protection for Burrow than they've had in the past with the culmination of these additions, right?
Certainly. Yeah, and, just getting back to the Orlando Brown thing, I love what you said about, if that's masquerading, then give me a masquerade. I mean, just because nobody wants to pay left tackle money does not mean that he is not a good left tackle. Right. I think that especially, adding Collins and just good rotational depth, I think is looking like just in general what the Bengals are investing in their offensive future. And I think that's a really smart way to go about it. You clearly have a team that can produce. You have a quarterback that can drive the ball down the field. You have receivers that can win one-on-ones, that can go get 50-50 balls. You've got it all. You just really need a lot of rotational depth, I think, this day and age to be able to compete in the AFC, especially if you're looking at a lot of shootout games. So I like what they've done with the offense. I like that they've gotten some really good rotational depth at wide receiver, and they've added to the offensive line, gotten some more protection for Burrow. I don't see any reason why this offense would regress this coming year. The only thing, as we were mentioning earlier, is don't exactly know what Chase Brown's ceiling is. If he can provide that third down pass protection ability that you get with Pirine. But again, I expect the Bengals offense to keep doing what the Bengals offense has been doing at the helm of Joe Burrow and company.
Right, and we didn't even mention the outlet of Tyler Boyd. They add in Irv Smith as their likely tight end starter. I mean, it's a big if because he's had a bit of a struggle staying healthy in past seasons. But, new environment, sometimes that can get guys in a new mindset. And I think he will be utilized. We saw that with Hayden Hurst. I don't think he's returning based on what I'm seeing on the depth chart here. But Irv Smith put together some nice games when he was healthy with the Vikings, and now he gets definitely an improvement of quarterback play to go along with it. I think they've done a nice job of increasing the versatility of the O-line along with getting some good additional weapons to go along with kind of your bread and butter of the Chase, Higgins, Boyd stack. Boyd, he's not getting younger necessarily. I know he's still relatively, I'd say maybe others would claim in his prime, whatever that means to you. But Charlie Jones can spell him in the slot and keep him fresh, which I like that. I like a lot of what they've done here on this side of the ball. So not a whole lot of concerns on the offensive side of the ball for the Bengals. But we need to move on to the defense here. Let's talk about this. This is where more of the interesting draft additions came. So on that note, let's just kick it off. They go ahead and grab Myles Murphy at the back end of the first round. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear your opening thoughts on his addition.
Yeah, especially, big body guy. He's going to be really great depth, really great rotation. I think that especially, as it broke my heart when the Saints let Trey Hendrickson go, didn't want to pay him, let him walk. And yes. I knew what a stud that he was going to be. Right. And he went to Cincinnati and he continued to ball out and do his thing, put up a lot of sacks and continued to game wreck. And that's the thing I think that gave him a lot of success, when he was playing on the Saints, is that they had a really good defensive line rotation. So grabbing Miles Murphy, I think just adds to that. Like, really good value, I think, at 28.
Similar skill sets as well. They complement each other quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Big body, 6'5", 275. Put him on the edge, and I think he's going to be a really nice complement to Hendrickson on the outside. I think just as far as value in the draft, I think that they addressed a really big concern, right? Is that they're already a talented front seven. It's just going to be in a long season, planning on deep playoff runs, right? What guys can we put that have a lot of upside, low high floor, high ceiling? Who's going to be able to get in there and in a rotational basis be able to produce?
Right. And there's been a lot of criticisms around kind of the, obviously there's the BPA community and the draft for need community, and there's constantly a war going on between that. But I think generally people do agree with BPA. Generally, it's just not at the cost of like really high needs. And we'll wait a little to get into the secondary concerns with the Bengals. But long story short, they're going to need Miles Murphy to have some impact year one. The good thing is that the Bengals are an attacking scheme. They like to get these guys that can attack inside, outside. They like to move their guys around on the line. And Murphy and Hendrickson are great at that. They have the strength to play inside. They have enough bend to like contest the edge. So it's a great addition. I feel that Murphy was one of the best picks of the first round personally, just for value's sake and kind of. I mean, let's be honest here. That Murphy was being talked about as in the top 10 discussion. I was seeing, with my draft obsessed brain, I was looking at mocks far before we even really got into the combine cycle. You saw Murphy consistently getting mocked to Seattle at 5, and the Bengals get him in the back end of the first round. I mean, it's great value. And going a little more into that, right? Obviously, they have DJ Reader. He's just the man on the inside. We love DJ Reader, at least I do. Kind of a throwback type of player, but I mean, he's just very underrated in terms of like ability to even penetrate. He's a great point of attack guy, but he does have some pass rush upside, which you love. And he seems to be getting better, even though now he's just about as good as you could ask for a nose or occasional 3-tech kind of guy. He's shifting around sometimes. But, they could use a little more interior depth. BJ Hill's been serviceable for them. He's put together some decent seasons. And I think that is kind of lends credence to where we see with the Murphy-Hendrickson kind of tandem, essentially, right? They're going to be making up for a little bit of a lack of interior pass rush by where they get bounced around on the line. So you love to see that. And transitioning real quick, if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about the retention of Jermaine Pratt. Okay, so this is some masterclass stuff from the Bengals GM, bringing back Pratt on a really affordable deal considering his skill set. I mean, we talk all the time about how important it is to have coverage backers in this game today. And Jermaine's one of the best right now in terms of statistics. You see, he's consistently being in the correct position, making plays on the ball. And he's a physical guy. He's not suffering from the run defense standpoint or any of that in order to be fast enough and skilled enough to play the ball. Him and Logan Wilson are really a formidable tandem there in the second level of the defense, and I'm very happy with their decision to keep those guys together, considering the scheme and the implications.
Certainly, yeah. I think especially too, as we'll get into with a little bit later when we get into the Bengals secondary, but especially within the division, I think that having good coverage linebackers that can go number to number between the numbers. They're good at playing depth. They're good at, making sure that you take away tight end options. They're good at, making you throw the ball where you don't want to. And they're good, especially good value. I really, really like the deal that they got him on. And I like that, especially they understand, right, that the defensive philosophy here is that they're going to be a little bit weaker in the secondary, so it's really going to be important to maintain those coverage linebackers that can get up the field and make you throw the ball places that you're not going to want to necessarily.
I was just trying to take a look and see. I mean, what am I missing here, Ryan? 4 years. It's not exactly giving me the per year details, but at the end of the day, 4-year contract. We know the money's good. 26-year-old coverage linebacker. I just don't understand why Jermaine Pratt isn't pulling a better deal on the open market. I mean, obviously the Bengals prioritized him. He wants to be there. That's great. But a bit surprising that they were able to retain him for what was needed. They're definitely keeping an eye on that Joe Burrow contract that's fast approaching. So you would think it maybe affects decisions that relate to guys like Pratt, who are up and coming and probably would have deserved a lot more money if it hadn't been sort of a strange linebacker class. A lot of veterans on the table, like Bobby Wagner, Levante David, who stuck around for a while. So it was almost like for a period of time there. I know Pratt went early, but I'm sure a lot of teams were holding out for maybe a little bit more star impact at that position. It's interesting to think about, though, and that's a good kind of transition point because we've talked up so much of what they're doing defensively here, but I think the real place of concern that you and I agree upon a little bit in kind of our prep for this episode was just this Bengals secondary. It has talented players. Don't get me wrong. There are some players that I like on this secondary, but it's also clearly the weakness of the overall roster, in my opinion. Do you want to kick off and tell me a little bit about what stood out to you on the Bengals secondary?
You know, I like Awuzie. I think that he's playing really, really well. I think not being able to retain. Sorry, hold on one moment.
Yeah, that's all right.
Losing Von Bell and Jesse Bates, I think, is going to hurt more than people maybe suspect or realize, especially considering that the depth that they have. You know, you got Nick Scott and Dax Hill, just drafted Jordan Battle. You're asking a lot of young guys to pick up quite an assignment in the AFC North especially, and if you're making a deep AFC playoff run, that's going to be a big weakness, and it's one of the only weaknesses, really, that the Bengals roster has, and if they think that teams aren't going to try to exploit that, I think that's a bit foolish. I mean, certainly they know that it's a weak spot on their roster. Losing Von Bell and Jesse Bates is a big loss, and I think that they're going to feel that throughout the season. I think that how their playoff run looks and sort of how they're able to make a deep run in the playoffs is going to depend a lot on how these young players step up in this secondary to try to fill that hole.
Well, and we can get into that a bit, right? You're talking about the loss of Bell and Jesse Bates. It's certainly a step in a different direction. Let's just call it that for the Bengals. I mean, they'd been relying heavily on those guys. The type of scheme they run, it's actually really important that they have, you know, hyper athletic safeties that can do a whole lot of different things. You got the two prototypical Swiss Army knives up there causing havoc in between just the pure physicality of what you get in the front seven with this team. They're kind of your playmakers. They're going to get the ball out. They're just going to attack. And, I mean, who was better at attacking from the safety position other than Jesse Bates last year and years prior? I mean, it's hard to question. He is a top-level safety, hard hitter, great in coverage, ball skills out the wazoo. It's hard to really criticize Jesse Bates' game. And Von Bell is an underrated free safety. I mean, they kind of interchange their roles, so I say that a little bit hesitantly as a free safety because he is very physical in the brand of free safeties. Also, decent ball skills. You would know. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know as a Saints fan. I mean, Von Bell was putting good tape out there even in the New Orleans days, and just kind of took a step forward with the Bengals. So I found it a bit surprising, and if I have any criticism of kind of how they've carried out their offseason, it's got to be, okay, maybe expected to lose Bates, but to then turn around and say, "Oh, we don't really need to retain Bell." It's a little surprising, and that's not to take away from the skill sets of a guy like Dax Hill, who they did spend a first rounder on. They clearly have faith in him to come in and play well. But more pressingly to me with their secondary is the fact that maybe you're going to roll Nick Scott, who's been a bit of a journeyman since I believe he was with the Rams for a period of time. He's not going to knock your socks off as a Von Bell replacement. And they did grab Jordan Battle, who I believe is like a 4th or 5th rounder out of Alabama. And Jordan Battle is a bit of a he's a what do you want to call it? Like a swing player. He's the outcome of his rookie season is going to be important to the success of this defense, undoubtedly, because I feel that his selection was made with the intention that he maybe supplants Nick Scott for starting free safety off rip. And I know they do like to interchange their personnel, so there's a lot of rotating they can do, but it's just a bit concerning, Ryan. You're asking the likes of Chido Awuzie, who we like, and Cam Taylor-Britt, who I don't know about you, doesn't do a whole lot for me at an outside corner. Another draft pick that we need to mention is DJ Turner, who I actually really, really enjoy watching out of Michigan. One of the stickiest corners, one of the fastest, just explosive corners you're seeing in coming out of this college class outside of your top of the top guys. Obviously, the first round this year was loaded. But, yeah, DJ Turner's a guy that kind of fell under the radar a tad. And you see a lot of dog mentality out of a guy like Turner. He's got a lot of top-end speed, always in the face mask of the receiver. So there is reason for optimism, but at the end of the day, you're asking a first-year starter in Dax Hill along with whatever combination of Jordan Battle and Nick Scott can do alongside a, all in all, I would call underwhelming cornerback group here. And this is a trend you see through the division, actually. The secondaries in this division are a little suspect for the top of the top teams. We'll get into that a bit. Cleveland aside, Pittsburgh aside, the tops of this division, they have a tendency to struggle in this area, and it's a bit concerning to me. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I think that we mentioned this before with the massive market resetting Burrow contract coming. This is clearly an attempt to, cut some money, save some cap, and try to get Burrow the deal that he deserves when the time comes, and to make sure that they have a competitive roster. I think that, what we were saying earlier about Myles Murphy, right, that they're expecting him to, come in and have an impact year one. I think that's tenfold for some of these guys, especially like Jordan Battle. That's a big task that they're being called to. And ultimately, if the draft picks work out and they end up being, not just serviceable, but if they turn out to be great talent, then, the Bengals front office, they might just look like geniuses, by letting Jesse Bates and Von Bell go and getting them on, getting these incredibly talented rookies on cheap contracts. And then, they still have an incredibly competitive roster by the time it comes to pay Burrow. That's the optimistic side, right? I think that there's been plenty of circumstances where secondaries, as soon as one anchor piece falls, then it's sort of like a house of cards. The rest of it tends to go and they start to slip. And then once the confidence goes, and especially in the AFC where there is so much firepower at quarterback, the secondary group has got to be rock solid, and it's got to be a group that you can depend on. I mean, how many times did we see the Chargers get burned by just, very small adjustments in a very young secondary? I think that it's a gamble, certainly, but it's almost a gamble that you're forced to make, right? Because when that Burrow deal comes due and, you got to pay him, you got to give him the money that he deserves, it's either going to leave them in a really, really good spot, and they, could be ultimately looking at dynasty if they're able to get a cheap young defense, with the like of, Myles Murphy, if he works out, with Dax Hill, Jordan Battle, some of these young guys, if they work out and they end up, like I said, being some of them turning out to be elite. Right. And you're able to retain the wide receiver core, then, they could be a legitimate team for a really long time. So I think that in a way their hand was forced a little bit to let those guys in the secondary walk. And, as far as taking risks, I think, Dax Hill and Jordan Battle, and certainly with DJ Turner as well. I like what you had to say about him. Really good value, really great hands right in the face of the receiver. Is going to be a guy that's great playing man. Those are decent guys to take a risk on, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I need to, I'm not backpedaling necessarily, but I will say I don't think I was clear enough in my first kind of analysis of it. I like Jordan Battle a lot. I thought when you were watching, I spent a decent amount of time watching Brian Branch's tape for this draft, just because I thought Seattle might be in on him. It was more of a personal kind of project. But one of the things I noticed with studying Branch was, man, it was very often that it was very difficult to tell Battle and Branch apart from one another on the field at times. I mean, they're making very similar plays. As you know, Alabama, they kind of are the, I wouldn't say the progenitors, but they're one of the few in the college game that run a pro-style safety kind of tandem, where they ask their safeties to do a lot of pro stuff in terms of just covering a lot of field, right? Making solo tackles in space, things along that line. It's things you see that like a Fangio scheme requires of these types of athletic safeties. And you're very much correct. I have to say, I am optimistic that somewhere between DJ Turner, Nick Scott, Jordan Battle, somewhere in there they're going to find a passable tandem that can complement Cheeto. But it's at the end of the day, are we trying to be passable if we're the Bengals, or are we trying to win the Super Bowl? And it's questionable. I understand there's limited cap. People are probably going to be saying to me, "Well, Spencer, if they bring Bell back, then maybe they don't bring Pratt back, and now you're criticizing the linebacker loss." That's fair, but at the end of the day, I don't remember Bell's contract being insanely lucrative. I believe it was Carolina that brought him in. And at the end of the day, I think that sometimes you have to bite the bullet and choose your poison as a GM, and that's clearly what they've done. But at the end of the day, another poison you might have taken was maybe just pay a little bit of extra cheese for Von Bell, just considering what you're going to be losing in Bates. We can't talk about that enough. Bates' skill set is just, it can't
Definitely.
be downplayed, really, his impact and the impact of his loss. But at the end of the day, I think all in all, this discussion kind of indicates to me that we're both still in on the Bengals as a player for this division, going
Certainly.
to be a very high-level team, going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year.
Absolutely.
without a doubt. All right,
Yeah,
so
and
oh, sorry, yeah, go.
No, that's okay. I think that, oh, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Must not have been that important.
I guess we're cutting this out then. No, we'll probably just keep it in. Fuck it.
Yeah.
No, but that's a great transition point, because we were talking about what are the expectations for this roster. We expect it to be great, really good.
Absolutely.
Even with whatever the secondary holds them back, but
Yeah, absolutely.
in order a bit of kind of the way we see the division falling, a team that's right up on their heels right now, this Bengals roster, is the Baltimore Ravens. It was a rocky offseason for Ravens fans. I know it was probably tough to sit through. As a Seattle fan, I can tell you I sat right there in the middle of the Russell Wilson, not necessarily holdout, but it was a bizarre situation, and one that really pulled fans' emotions different directions throughout. But it's good to see the Ravens fan base and organization just kind of weathering the storm with the Jackson contract issue, and now he's back in town, and boy, did I really enjoy what they decided to turn around and say, hey, check this out, what we'll do now that we have Jackson. Ravens had a great draft. Tell me, what kind of stands out to you for the Ravens offseason? What were the strengths? What were the weaknesses? Do you think it was mishandled? Do you think it was well handled?
I am.
Or did I say? I didn't say Bengals. Ravens. I think I said Ravens, right?
I knew what you meant.
Okay.
Yeah, getting to the whole Lamar thing, it was a really dramatic offseason for AFC quarterback free agents. And I want to say, just on the record, I respect that Lamar Jackson wants to be his own agent, and he is standing up for himself and saying, I produce. I'm an elite talent. I'm an MVP winning quarterback. I deserve this money that I deserve.
He's not the first.
He's not the first.
Bobby
And
Wagner did it.
And he certainly won't be the last. And he deserved that money, and I'm glad that he got his money. And now that the contract is over, I think that this is almost going to be a Lamar Jackson revenge tour, if that makes sense. Because I remember there was so much speculation, and there were people just throwing out the craziest theories that, like, there's collusion among the league, that, nobody's signing Lamar so that they could get him cheaper, or that, they're deeper, maybe character traits that people didn't like, or that front offices were scared to pick him up, or there was so many crazy things flying around the league that I think that now that Lamar was able to get this deal done with Baltimore, it's going to be a big prove-it moment for the teams that didn't want to pony up and give him the money, and ultimately he's going to prove why there should be another team that should have paid him that money. And I'm just glad, and I'm very, very thankful that he did not end up in the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons, because that would have been a problem.
We'll get to that in the NFC South breakdown, but Atlanta's another roster that's ascending, and his addition could have been dangerous without a doubt,
certainly, considering
what they added otherwise. But so as far as the offseason goes, a lot of really interesting additions. They were a bit limited in what they were able to accomplish, but this wasn't exactly a roster that was dying for a boost in talent, in my opinion. I think this is one of the better rosters in the league.
Certainly.
Let me see. I just want to make sure that my... okay. Yeah, we have Lamar locked down now. People have made a lot of to-do about the running back injuries, but a big part of me is doubtful that you're ever going to see another season like the one they just had. It was a complete bevy of running back injury after running back injury, and you're looking at a J.K. Dobbins who's 2 years removed out the ACL now. Gus Edwards just had a nagging thing going on all year. He should be back to full speed. They really do have a solid rotation in this backfield when they can get everyone healthy, and hopefully now that everybody's somewhat recovered. I'm sorry. Now that everybody's somewhat recovered, you would hope maybe they can spell each other to prevent further injury going forward.
Certainly. And to that point, that this season's not going to look at all like last season, obviously what Lamar does very, very well is he is an incredible threat in the run game. That's been no secret. That's part of the reason that he won that MVP. I think I want to go on the record now saying, all of these people, all of the Lamar haters, are saying he's not a good passer, that he's not a true passer. I think that's going to be another thing that we're going to see this season, is that there's going to be a lot of silence on those fronts, especially now that we've got a recovered running back room and we have a vastly improved wide receiver core for Lamar. I think that the sky is the limit as far as what his talent is. Now that he's got his money situation, he's got his money, he's got a good wide receiver room, he's got a healthy running back room. This season is going to look a lot different for the Ravens offense. I think they're not going to have to rely so heavily on the Lamar Jackson, rushing cheese, as some would say. Mm-hmm. But he does still bring that to his game, and he is a good passer, and I think that he is going to have a marked improvement in his passing game this upcoming season, especially with the improvements to the wide receiver room. I think last year, coupled with the running back injuries and the fact that it was almost like a Packer situation where it was like, just get the man some receivers and he can get the ball down the field. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting season to watch. I think this is going to be a vastly different Lamar Jackson than we're used to seeing.
I couldn't agree more. That's a great kind of transition point. I didn't really bring it up formally yet, but 100%. I think we both feel a pretty similar way about Rashad Bateman. I don't feel that he has really had enough around him to where he's not necessarily not seeing double teams, but I don't think he's the type of player where you're going to line him up across from the top DB on the other team and he's just going to dominate. But the shifting of this overall roster and depth is it's stunning, to be honest. I mean, the addition of Odell Beckham, I know a lot of people are low on kind of his, I'm not, what are they low on? You know, are they low on the injury history? Sure, that's understandable, but he's had a lot of time to get right and get strengthened. And I mean, I've seen some posts from like the Instagram and things. He's looking jacked out of his mind. I mean, we're talking about a rocked up to the maximum Odell Beckham right now. I mean, I couldn't believe some of the photos I was seeing. Maybe we could plug that in post, but I mean, he's looking like AJ Brown out there these days. Just a built dude now. And hopefully that strength is going to reduce the impact of some licks he's going to receive out on the field as the de facto number one. But the thing with it is Odell's inclusion into this passing game, it really gives Rashad Bateman a great opportunity to go against some DBs who are not at the level of Rashad Bateman. I mean, Rashad Bateman on other schemes with better threats in the past, I feel could have had a lot better of an early career. And we are probably going to see an emergence from Bateman in this regard because obviously you have the addition of Zay Flowers. Odell probably see Zay as kind of the de facto slot to start off. But he showed in his college skill set he can spend time on the outside in some regard. It's going to be a little limited and at times a bit scary with him just in terms of his like bodily skill set. He's going to need to prove that he can be a consistent outside contributor. But just as a slot off rip, being asked to complement Odell and Bateman, what those two can give you, you could do a hell of a lot worse with this receiving core, and it gets even amped up to another degree when you consider this is all centered around the man himself, Mark Andrews. Kick it off. Tell me about Mark Andrews.
Well, just real quick, you know, before getting into Mark Andrews, I think that I'll even up your ante. I think that Zay Flowers is going to pop off. I think that this is potentially going to be offensive rookie of the year, and especially when they're running this type of zone offense that they're running, and this like a lot of the option, a lot of the RPOs, and you know, just I think about I think about assignments, right? And when you have to respect Lamar in the run game with a healthy Dobbins, with you do have Odell Beckham Jr., who, you know, even if he's not Odell Beckham Jr. of old, he is certainly a guy that you've got to have a body, if not two, on in certain situations. And you have Mark Andrews, and then have a guy like Zay Flowers that can, you know, get loose and get lost. That's about the best option I think that you had out of this draft class, you know, maybe outside of Njigba. But I think that just the situation itself is really, really beneficial to Zay Flowers. And I think that aside from Bateman and OBJ and Mark Andrews and Lamar, there's going to be too many eyes in too many directions, and he's going to get loose, and he's going to be a big deep ball threat, and he's going to be able to find weak spots in these defenses, especially, you know, in the divisional games against the Bengals, where they're asking a whole lot of that secondary, and especially that linebacking core. You know, lock down Andrews, lock down Dobbins, make sure that Lamar can't run the ball on us all game. You know, make sure that Odell can't get loose, you know, deep downfield. Who's covering Zay Flowers? Who's left to make sure that he's not getting left down the field? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think that he has just got an incredibly high ceiling, and it is an incredible situation that he's walked into. And I think that it was a great selection where they got him in the draft. And big fan of Zay Flowers.
Yeah, I mean, to lend more credit to that point, I mean, it's just there's so many different ways this offense can attack you right now. You're going to be thinking about Odell Beckham. You're going to be thinking about Bateman as downfield threats. You're going to be thinking primarily and most definitely about Mark Andrews eating you alive on the underneath, on short inner posts. I mean, the chemistry him and Jackson have is up there with some of the best in the league. And not even mentioning Jackson, his ability to threaten on the ground, as you described, in conjunction with what they can do from a play action standpoint. This has always been an offense that's creatively utilized guys like Devin Duvernay, for example, who's sort of the odd man out. He'll probably contribute in some ways, but if you look at Zay Flowers' skill set, if you're able to get Zay Flowers in space in a lot of the similar ways you did with Duvernay, he can give you a lot of the production that you were being given from Duvernay, if not more, just because of his yak is actually quite special, despite his size limitations. And on top of that, he's going to give you legit slot receiver production at minimum, if not spelling your outside guys on top of that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think this is shaping up to be a dangerous Ravens offense, and we shouldn't linger too far on the skill positions just because it's important to kind of look through the trenches here. A little bit of kind of some short-term kind of kick the can down the road type of starters here on the line. You got Moses, who is very deep into his career. He's putting up good production, playing well. And they were able to draft Voorhees late, which I liked. He did tear his ACL during the combine pre-draft process, so he won't be available, but he's probably looked at as a long-term option for guard or tackle down the line. So, but the rolling out Moses at right tackle, Kevin Zeitler at right guard. These are solid contributors in the short term. Probably not your long-term solutions at those positions, but you do have some mainstays to talk about as well with Ronnie Stanley and a returning Tyler Linderbaum. And I believe this is going to be year 2 for Tyler Linderbaum, if I'm not mistaken. One of the most touted center prospects of the last decade, in my opinion. I'm very, very high on Tyler Linderbaum's skill set. Excuse me. So yeah, tell me a little bit what you feel about the trench play. Is that going to possibly hold them back in any regard, or what do you think? How's that going to reflect on the production of the overall offense?
I think especially after last season where they had of just torn apart running back room, this is especially under the helm of Jim Harbaugh, where you have a lot of zone reads and you have a lot of RPOs. I think that this is an offensive line that has a lot to task, so to speak, just as far as coverage assignments. And there's a lot of talent that they're going to have to make sure that, doesn't get through, doesn't just completely game break, so to speak. I certainly think that they're going to be serviceable. And with as talented of a roster as they have, I think, serviceable is great. I mean, certainly I think you're wanting to win the division. You're going to have weak spots in your offense, but I think that they're certainly going to get the job done. If they were able to, run the ball the way that they were last year, and given those circumstances, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be able to produce at that level, if not better, just because they're going to have a wider range of directions that they can take the ball, right? Again, I completely agree with you. I think that, having the anchors of Linderbaum and Stanley, really, really great pieces. And outside of those two positions, they've got really, really good rotation. I liked the Amave Loalu pick. Got him in the 7th. Good depth guy. Just making sure that those guard positions are staying healthy, I think is going to be a big, important piece of this offense moving forward. If any of those linemen go down, it's certainly going to cause problems, especially if it's like Linderbaum, because they don't have much center depth. They'd have to probably swing somebody over to center. How about you? What are your thoughts?
I was trying to figure out. You said what pick? Who did they take?
Oh, it was in the 7th, in the 6th. They got Amave Loalu out of Oregon, the tackle. But it looks like they're probably going to play him. Oh, they got it. They got him at right tackle right now, 3rd on the tackle chart. I suspect they might swing him over to guard.
I see him. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you were saying the last name. I didn't realize he was a hyphen guy.
Big hyphen guy.
The hyphen. Everybody loves a hyphen these days. Yeah, not to distract too much from your point there. Getting back a little more into the non-mainstays here, kind of the filling guys. You got Kevin Zeitler at 33. You could conceivably get a few more years out of him. Same with Morgan Moses. He's actually only 32, so maybe I was kind of overblowing a little bit the aging cycle for those guys. They may have a little bit of time to groom some backups to step into their positions, but the real question is, what kind of level of play are you going to get out of these guys at this point? Zeitler, I have a lot of confidence in personally. I mean, he was borderline perennial All-Pro with the Bengals in his heyday, so to speak. So he's going to give you a good amount of production. And again, like you said, we are talking about a roster with so much surrounding these guys that with all of the interesting, cool misdirection that John Harbaugh is known to do offensively, yeah, you're going to see a lot of good things out of this Ravens. Let's scoot on a little more to the defensive side of the ball. First thing that stood out to me, just as a transitional point to kick off, was how good is Roquan Smith about to be in year 2 with this Ravens team? Right?
Incredibly good.
Mm-hmm. I think you're talking about pairing him with the likes of Odafe Owe, who's coming in, and he already showed a lot of flashes, needs to get the consistency back right. I have no doubt that they are going to get him to a point where he can be a respectable edge. Maybe he's never going to climb up into any Pro Bowl discussion, but man, he is athletic as they come, a tough guy, and still developing. So we really don't know what the ceiling is for him, but still a great starter to have in. And you've got Michael Pierce, who's just one of the best nose tackles. Again, it's kind of interesting seeing him and DJ Reader in the same division, because it's just like those guys are they're just, I don't know if they're far and above all the rest of the nose tackles in the league, but they do stand out as some of the best to do it. And Pierce is just an absolute dog in there, pretty much a point of attack for them in a big regard. They can play around him. Matabuke, kind of similar to Owe. I'm a little bit hesitant to believe that he can develop into anything further than what he is now. But again, just a respectable edge that's really just going to be part of an overall rotation, we know. They could use a little more star power in terms of pass rush, but I do think we know that the way that they like to attack with blitzes and just be constantly on the offensive as a defense kind of lends toward these edge guys working out a little better than you'd expect for other schemes. But yeah, that's kind of where I see with Roquan Smith. You know, Roquan Smith, year 2, he's never played in a defense this talented before. He's going to have his running mate, Patrick Queen, who has been effective, maybe not world-beating as many could have seen him becoming, but still has time in that regard. And they did decline his option, but now I'm hearing reports that they actually do intend to extend him. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But I could see him at minimum getting one more year in this defense to kind of prove it for them. And alongside Roquan Smith, I mean, that's a dangerous front seven without a doubt. You have any thoughts?
Definitely. Yeah, I actually really like Patrick Queen. I remember that it was the second pick that the Ravens had sniped from the Saints. I really, really wanted Lamar when the Saints traded up.
Oh, you were in on Patrick Queen? I remember that.
I was also in on Patrick Queen, and I like, especially in this 3-4 defense, I like the versatility, I like the size, I like the speed. I think that he can be, especially if they're, now that you've heard, considering extending him, I think that's a really good idea. I think that he really still can develop. We knew coming in that he was going to be a project, and I think that especially just given like the nature of the league, right? You and I have talked about this before with, names like Hassan Reddick. Patrick Queen, he's got the same size, speed, versatility as some of these other guys, and I think that if he gets put into the right sort of scheme with the right, defensive play caller, that he could ultimately become a game wrecker. I'm pretty high on Patrick Queen into the future. If they plan on extending him, I'm a big fan of that, and I do like the front seven. Like you were saying, I think that they do they could still improve, just with some star power on the defensive line. But other than that, I do love that Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen linebacker set. I think that's
Well, and let me
phenomenal.
pause at this too. I mean, Patrick Queen has impressed in many regards since entering, but the thing with it is they're showing a bit of a hesitancy to maybe return him. We'll see how that works out. But declining the option, it gives me mixed signals on just how badly they want him back in this defense. Because on top of that, what I would posit to you is, if that's the case, then why are they taking a guy who, for all intents and purposes, has a near identical skill set in Trenton Simpson out of Clemson? Trenton Simpson, as rangy as they get in the way that you're describing with Queen, maybe even a little more physical than Queen in terms of setting an edge or even like getting some impact in the pass rush if you send him on a blitz, which, as we know, they like to just be very versatile with their overall personnel. So they like very versatile guys, and I see Trenton Simpson in a similar mold. I mean, there's no promise of whether Queen returns, but at the end of the day, I think plugging Simpson in as kind of a Sam kind of tweener guy like you're describing, or transitioning some guys to sort of more of an attacking partial edge role. I mean, Trenton Simpson's going to need a year to develop, but that's on the table for a guy with his skill set. Thoughts
Certainly,
on
and I
Trenton
think
Simpson?
Yeah, Trenton Simpson, he's Simpson, excuse me. He's definitely a guy that's got that versatile skill set. When he was at Clemson, I think that they had him playing safety, and they dropped him into the box, and they were like, just be a game wrecker, be anywhere on the field, go get the quarterback. He's great in the run game. Just rotational depth alone, I think he offers a lot, and especially like we were saying on the defensive line, not a whole lot of star power, but if they can just trick you, give you some interesting looks, give you some looks that maybe are not what you've seen before, and you've got Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, and rotational guys like Simpson, it's going to be hard to know exactly when they're blitzing, when they're dropping back in coverage, and if they do, there's certainly guys that are going to be able to burn you, and that they're going to be able to disrupt a game. I do like the pick. I think that especially in this 3-4 defense, like we were talking about earlier, prior to the pod, I like this pick a lot, and he's clearly a guy with a lot of versatile talent. Going back to the Queen thing, why are they kind of being hesitant with the 5th-year option? I mean, who knows? This is the front office that refused to give Lamar his money until about a month ago. So I think it's tough to say.
The money probably has a big part to do with it, right? The money just gave away to Lamar.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably have to agree to disagree there. I kind of see. I'm sure they like Queen, but I think that they, in the end all be all, I think they can get a similar kind of level of production out of Trenton Simpson with learning behind him, and that the extension talks are more just to placate the fan base a tad, in my opinion, or his market, to convince him to come in and play this final year and go on his merry way. But I talked about a little bit earlier. Trenton Simpson's kind of versatility, like you're saying, his ability to impact the run game a bit. They do like their Sam guys. Like they had Tyus Bowser from a few years back. They're still running him as an occasional kind of like little oomph in the pass game to throw in on occasion. And it's interesting to talk about too. They have Ojabo, who I kind of saw more as a pure just lineman in this scheme, just a 3-4 kind of a defensive end more so, but they actually have him listed at Sam here, which, I mean, I don't know how athletic he is to where he can play in space like that. I know you don't ask the Sam to do a whole lot of that generally, but it's kind of interesting, and Ojabo is a bit of a wild card. I think that they just have him listed where he is, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what he is, but if he can fit into the rotation with Owe and Matabuke, Tyus Bowser is going to come in and give you a little extra punch. I mean, you can get a passably effective pass rush out of this, combined with the athleticism of your linebacking core. But transitioning a little out of the front seven talk, It's going to be a similar discussion to the Bengals secondary with the Ravens, in my opinion. Where are you at? Because me personally, I would say I'm a lot more optimistic with the outcome of this Ravens secondary. A lot was made to do about their cornerback play and the need for a corner. But specifically, I'll say the recent addition of Rocky Sin being brought in to be sort of a bookend to Marlon Humphrey. That's really interesting because Rocky Sin actually had a lot of good tape with the Colts. Pretty physical guy, definitely a gritty, kind of smaller mold of DB, but he's respectable, and it gives me pause just to say how much of a concern is this secondary in comparison to like others in the division, such as the Bengals, right? We made a lot to do about that.
Yeah, I'm more optimistic about the Ravens secondary than I am about the Bengals secondary. I think Marlon Humphrey is very, very talented corner. That's no secret. I have mixed feelings on Marcus Williams, former Saint. There's been many, many times in the playoffs where I'm not going to lie, that man folded.
No bias, no bias there on that take whatsoever.
No, absolutely not. He had sold several times in a lot of big games. But again, I think it's a very different situation. I think that the Saints were asking their secondary to do a lot. I think they were especially asking him to do a lot. Not to slander the man.
Well,
but
let me come to the defensive Williams it's at. I mean, he's had some quality years with the Ravens.
Absolutely.
Since he left. It seems to me that he's actually a much better fit for this defensive scheme than the Saints. Possibly.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that was not a match made in heaven. I think that he certainly had the talent to get on the roster and see how he did. And I'm not to say that he played poorly for the Saints. I don't think that he did. It's just a lot of big games, a lot of big moments that Saints secondary folded. And he has played better in Baltimore. And I think better scheme fit, maybe better team fit, what have you. In general, he's playing better for the Ravens. And I'm more optimistic. I like Kyle Hamilton still coming into his second year. I think that young guy. There was a lot of hype for him coming out of the draft last year, and he will continue to improve. I worry about rotational depth. There's not a lot here that I'm seeing that jumps out at me as particularly spectacular depth if they're going to have some injury problems in the secondary. But in general, I'm more optimistic about the Ravens secondary than I am about the Bengals secondary. But playing the Bengals twice a year and playing the Browns twice a year and the Steelers, tall ask out of any secondary, especially a young secondary.
Right. Difference being from an overall team perspective, it seems that the Ravens now have the firepower to stand in these kind of shootout style games, and I think that's a big factor with the success level the Ravens may or may not find themselves with this year. Is it's going to depend mighty heavily on, can this secondary play well enough to limit the teams that would normally be dominating, and to where they can just pull just ahead of the other team from a production standpoint to where they can eke out wins against some of these teams. Divisionally, I mean, we know this the offenses in this division are formidable. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit more. Steelers and Browns, I think we both kind of agree on the rise in a lot of regards in terms of talent and kind of what they're doing at quarterback specifically. But yeah, it's going to be very, very important that the secondary can, at the very least, minimize the production of these really, really high-caliber wide receiving cores. I think something that needs to... Let me look over the depth chart one more time. You were saying Kyle Hamilton. He's a bit of a strange case here. He's a bit of an odd man out. I know he kind of struggled to find a role a little bit with them early. I don't think... I mean, they have him listed right now as their strong safety starter, but I know that they are actually quite high on the Geno Stone guy, and he did play well for them. Ardarius Washington was a somewhat hyped prospect that they stole late, like they do. The Ravens love doing that, just grabbing whoever, wherever, that nobody's recognizing is as good as they are. You've also got Jalen Armour Davis. Regardless of what you think about Hamilton, if he can be a factor as a linebacker, wherever they move him, he is a very secure tackler, just a very polished prospect, not unlike Branch this year in a lot of ways. You saw Branch fall in a similar regard because I think teams in some ways, they question just how, like, what is this guy exactly? He's a lot of things. That's what makes him great. So I think Hamilton will find his way into this lineup and make an impact somewhere, but it is interesting to think that the safety position for him, there's a lot of guys threatening, so if he does slip and play, Jalen Armour Davis and these other guys are waiting in the wings for their opportunity. So a lot of quality depth on this defense, and I think that's where you and I both land, is that the starting players on the secondary for the Ravens in comparison to the Bengals are maybe not a lot higher quality, but higher quality, and they're deeper than the Bengals to go with it. So certainly advantage Ravens in that regard, and but it's still a concern at the end of the day. You know, I think it's worthwhile that there was so much fixation from the media during the draft cycle. Oh, we got to get a corner at this spot. It has to be corner. We know they had a little more on their plate at the time. They were trying to figure out Lamar, placate Lamar, grab Odell, and they grabbed Zay. You know, a lot of people thought that pick for Zay would have been a corner. We're both really high on Zay's ability coming in, so like what they've done overall. It's a fun team to talk about, no doubt about it. Did you have any closing thoughts on the Ravens before we move on to the Browns?
No, I think that's everything that I had.
Okay.
Re-signing, is it Posick? Posick. Bringing back Posick, extending Conklin, exercising Willis's fifth-year option. All 5 of those linemen are on the roster until 2024. I think that was great, considering how great the run game was, you know, with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt last year. They understood something that's foundational to a lot of NFL teams, is that if you want to get it done through the air, you've got to get it done on the ground. And they had some of the best ground production last year, and offensive line was critical to that. Just on the offensive side of the ball, you and I were talking about this the other day too. I feel like not nearly enough people are talking enough about Elijah Moore being an addition to this receiving core. Looking at their depth chart here, you've got Cooper, Moore, Peoples-Jones, a really, really great tight end in Njoku. Along with that O-line, it is, you know, and even drafting Tillman, who I think has, you know, great potential. They've really just got a really great offense all around. They've got a really great run game. It really, to me, all hinges on how Watson's going to play in this upcoming season. Obviously, last year is not what we're used to seeing, and just want to put on the record that I will do nothing but root against the guy. I'm not a Watson fan whatsoever, as I don't think most people are. But I think that he will be back to truer form this season, and if he can't get it done with this offense and this line, that's a problem.
Well, that's one of the things I was referring to when I said I'm the bad guy, right? Because it's not a popular or fun take to have that the Browns are going to be good this year. And it's mostly because it's not a popular or fun take to have that Watson is going to bounce back. However, I challenge you, if you are one of those people, to look through this roster and tell me exactly what position isn't going to do anything and everything to support Watson's knocking off of that rust. I mean, Ryan got into the starters pretty well, but let me get a little more in depth, right? Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller have together formed one of the most formidable guard duos in the league for a couple years now. And when you throw in the addition of Posick, I would know Posick well. A versatile guy, a guy who's capable of playing really a lot of spots along the line. He shared time around. Coming out of LSU, he had played every single position on the offensive line. Settled into center with Seattle, was actually pretty underwhelming with Seattle in those days. But something clicked with his first year in Cleveland, because breakout alert for this guy. He and it's unsurprising.
Absolutely.
He's coming in along the likes of the best guard duo one of the best guard duos in the league. I don't know if I want to make that much of a statement, but Jedrick Wills, very solid. Jack Conklin, maybe a little underwhelming for the money he was paid, but still just a very impactful tackle. Like you said, a quality line that's locked up for the foreseeable future. And bringing back Posick was a big part of that. Fresh off a breakout, didn't really get the money you would have expected for that kind of performance. So yeah, and getting a little more into the depth too with the Browns, right? Peoples-Jones' job is not safe. He's a quality player. He's going to have a role for them, but they brought in Cedric Tillman for a pretty reasonable draft compensation. Cedric Tillman, very physical, go up and get it type of guy, can threaten on the outside, be a true complement to Cooper, and give them good snaps on the outside to kind of spell Peoples-Jones or potentially just take his job outright. Because, I don't know about you, but I was really high on Cedric Tillman as a prospect. He's physical,
same.
Pretty precise route runner. Going to be a good complement in the run game. He's going to do really well, helping even further set that edge. Not like this line needed any help with that for Chubb. But yeah, not a lot to dislike about this Browns roster. It all comes down to Watson, as it has since his arrival with the Browns, right? He's got quality depth beyond Tillman at receiver even, so they're more or less injury-proof. You're going to be able to get good snaps out of Marquise Goodwin. Jakeem Grant, I believe, returning off of a significant injury, but we knew how explosive and dangerous he was with the Dolphins. And the wild card on this receiving core is Schultz, I believe his name is. What is it? Not Schultz, Schwartz, excuse me. Anthony Schwartz. Total burner, obviously, kind of one of those guys that got his name off of speed alone for the most part, but also a threat, just chock full of threats here. Getting a little more into Elijah Moore, it's like you're saying, Elijah Moore just heavily underutilized with the Jets, and it was inexplicable because one of the most polished slot threats to come out in a while. I think he can be the Jigba or the Flowers like we're describing for these. We brought up Jigba, but obviously we talked about Flowers. I think he can be that, and if anything, a more polished version of that, which Cleveland's going to need, because outside of Cooper, they don't have a de facto number 2, but I see all the signs of dudes that can step up and be, if not that number 2, they can be quality 3s. Who knows? Maybe Moore ends up being the second receiving option, even though he will probably be relegated to the slot quite a bit. We know Moore can play on the outside a little bit. It just depends on the matchup. So, yeah, if I had to make a bet here, all in all, I've probably rambled on about this too much, but I'm trying to make my case. Watson, however long it takes him, I think by the end of this season you're going to see a lot of that dust knocked off and a player that's highly talented with a whole lot to work with.
And that's just it. I think that coming off a really, really deservedly heinous offseason, it was a very underwhelming season, something that we're not used to seeing from Watson. And I just think that, in general, if you're the guy that's worth this amount of money, then this is the offense and this is the roster to prove it with. If you can't get it done with this O-line, if you can't get it done with this wide receiver room, if you can't get it done with this run game, then you not only did you not deserve that contract, but I'm not sure where you belong in the league. So to your credit, I think that we will see that rust get knocked off, and he'll become more polished, and he'll be back more to his old self. And I think that just has to do with the talent around him. This is nowhere near the amount of talent that he was used to with Houston, and he was able to produce incredible numbers, put up great numbers, and play good football in Houston. I think that it just really all rests on his shoulders. We know what his talent is. We know what his ceiling is. We'll see what happens. I think that it's a really, really talented roster. It's a really great wide receiver core. And obviously Chubb and that O-line, they're going to keep doing what they're going to do.
Right. Everybody's low on Russell Wilson right now, but you do see it getting discussed with Russell Wilson, this regression to the mean narrative, right? And it's kind of getting talked about, well, for the comparison of Russell's entire career, what he put on tape last season, the regression to the mean seems likely. I mean, it was such an aberration from what we've seen from Wilson. And I mean, there are people that would argue, well, he's older. He just fell off the cliff finally, and he won't regress back. But if you can make an argument for an aging Wilson to regress back to the mean and be at least a competent quarterback, well, then what does that mean for Watson, who during his prime, which, I mean, to be fair, he's still, a lot of people would argue, in the smack dab of his prime even now. But 2 years ago, when he really was playing at his highest level, it was nowhere near to what we saw this previous season under him. And if regression to the mean dictates the same way, I mean, maybe he doesn't go back to perennial all-pro Deshaun Watson, but I think with this roster and this offensive personnel, and we didn't even talk about Kevin Stefanski's abilities to scheme up great, open looks to these guys, get Elijah Moore in space. I have no doubt he can utilize that personnel to get at least league average quarterback play out of Watson. And if he can't get league average out of Watson, it's like you said, is there a place for Watson in this league any longer? He's not going to go to a team with better supporting talent, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Interesting little discussion there around Watson, but let's go ahead and transition to the defense here, because this is where things get a little more interesting, specifically in terms of the, draft additions. We didn't mention too much. DeJuan Jones, Luke Whippler, those are both good additions. I'm not entirely sure either of them really threaten for starting opportunities year one, even though they are high-quality players, and they really stole them where they selected them in this draft. But not too much to talk about with those guys. They're going to be depth additions for the time being that will threaten for starting jobs in the future, although there is chance possibly that DeJuan Jones can even see the lineup early as a swing tackle in some regard, or obviously injury aside. But it's the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. There were some steals in this draft for Cleveland, which they've been doing for the last couple years. One of the which that I like to fixate on a bit here is Siaki Ika. A lot of people don't like him as just a. I think it's difficult to dislike him for what he is. He's just a space-eating, big meat shield that you plug in the middle and say, hold the point of attack. And I think in terms of the talent level we're talking about that we'll get into with the Cleveland defense, I think he's going to fit in very well there. I mean, he's going to be playing behind Dalvin Tomlinson anyway. Maybe eventually they slot him in, but he's a good rotational guy for them on the running downs for the time being, and maybe there's some room for development there, but he was one guy they stole. And another guy that I liked that they had picked was, sorry, I should have had this pulled up. I think it was Ronnie Hickman at safety. They had stolen him as well. Another guy, decent ball skills. I think that they're pretty well set in the secondary right now anyway, but always good to have.
I don't know that they got Hickman. Sorry.
Ronnie Hickman?
Yeah. Oh, are you talking about a different draft?
Was he not? I thought he was just selected.
Yeah, I see him.
21 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Right out of Ohio State guy, ball skills, rangy. Again, these are all guys they aren't going to necessarily need off rip, but it speaks to the depth of the team. There's a lot of star power on the starting lineup alone, and then you think about the depth that they're bringing. Their second and third units, man. It's going to be very difficult to keep up with this team in terms of rotations, and they're going to be able to keep guys fresh because they have a lot of talent.
Absolutely. The one thing I will say is, if there's a theme for the AFC North, I think this is it, is that an area of focus, I think, is the secondary, especially after Denzel Ward got that big contract extension. It was followed by a pretty underwhelming season, especially considering the fact that they lost Greedy Williams as well. I think that this is a secondary that if you're going to attack this team anywhere, you're going to attack them in the secondary. What are your thoughts?
I don't know exactly. I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't been hawking over Denzel Ward's production over the prior years, but I have no doubt in my mind that Denzel Ward's going to continue to be a mainstay and a contender for Pro Bowls year to year. Not a whole lot of concern around Denzel Ward, but I will say this, that it's going to be interesting to see with what Grant Delpit can do in his, I think this might be his third year.
Yep.
Again, there's a lot of depth on this team where his job could be in question, but he's played well. I just want to see him take that extra step up in terms of ball production, and I mean, he was a complete terror in college. It was
he did have 4 picks last year.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good production already.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing his talent and his abilities, I want to see amp it up, because
Right.
they could really use that kind of threat. I mean, Juan Thornhill, he's a respectable free safety, but they're gonna need Grant Delpit to show out big time for them, and I think Ronnie Hickman is a big part of that perspective at the safety group for them, right? Because I'm not sure they like Juan Thornhill for the short term, if I had to guess, but I think they also believe Ronnie Hickman could be a long-term solution, specifically at free safety. But I'm not overly concerned about the secondary for this team too much, and that's like a standout for them in the division, is that they're one
Right.
of the few teams that doesn't have holes. Greg Newsome even has been, I know, slightly underwhelming for the draft status, but he has inside-outside versatility, which I really like with him. And at the end of the day, you're getting a high-effort player that has decent ball skills, that can play physical at the corner position, contribute in the run game a little bit. It's just at the end of the day, he has size limitations that they benefit him in some ways and they don't benefit him in others. But it's nice that they can bump him into nickel a decent amount. And that's just it's a dangerous defense we're talking about here when you have all of these threats to produce turnovers in your secondary, like between Delpit. Thornhill can be a bit of a thumper at times. We know Ward is a dog at corner.
Mm-hmm.
Can get that ball out, can just menace receivers all game long. It's not a team you want to be getting receivers in space on a whole bunch, because if you get tackled in the open field by this Cleveland defense, more often than not, they're getting the ball out. So,
Right.
Yeah, I come off like the biggest Cleveland fan in the world in this discussion, but again, I would really challenge our viewers, if they disagree with me, go look at the depth chart for Cleveland. Where's the hole? I can't find a hole on this roster. I really can't. We can go into front seven and we'll talk about the same exact things, Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just one more thing too. I wanted to mention too that I think that bringing in Jim Schwartz is going to be a massive improvement for them this season. Bringing in a proven defensive coordinator that can utilize the talent that they have. I love that addition, and a decent segue into the front seven. I mean, obviously, Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. I love that running duo.
Yeah, recent development with the addition of Smith.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. You and I discussed this the other day, that we love this Zadarius Smith signing. an incredible development, I think, for Garrett even. To have a true running mate, I think is going to do wonders for what he can do already on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, depth wise, I do like the Ika pick as well. Let's see here.
I mean, that was one of the biggest concerns with this defense, right? Was the running game. If there was anywhere you were going to attack this Cleveland D, it was in the run game. So being able to rotate Ika out, I know he won't start, but when used correctly, his addition alongside Tomlinson, I mean, that can be a pretty formidable duo in the center that can kind of two-gap and shed and get their hands on the back. There's not going to be a whole lot of TFLs outside of the edge group, but that's not really their games, you know? I mean, Tomlinson can penetrate a little bit, but for the most part, you're just going to see a whole lot of two-gap shed, clamp the back, and get him down, and that should be good enough considering what you're working with on the edges and even at the linebacking with the Browns, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm also like you. I'm sad to say it, but you have convinced me over the last couple of days that we've discussed. Like, this is really a good roster, and it's really not a hot take, I don't think, to say that this Browns team is going to be even better than they were last year. And I think that, you know, just these first three teams that we've talked about, this makes it an incredibly competitive division so far.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the reality of what the Browns are that really puts it over the top, because we've had these renditions of the Bengals and Ravens for a minute. I mean, obviously the Ravens took a big step, in our opinion. But just to have the Browns being as legit as they seem right now from a roster perspective, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it just... If we look at teams like the Saints, right? Saints are a pretty talented roster overall, and a lot of people look at the addition of Derek Carr as like, this is the obvious favorite to win the division. To be fair, it's a weaker division. I mean, if that's the case, though, that's the kind of needle mover that an addition of a guy like Carr becomes. Then what are we talking about with this Cleveland team if we get real Watson back?
Yeah, no doubt.
On top of what they're fielding roster-wise.
No doubt. You know, even we were talking, like you had mentioned earlier, that regression to the mean. Even if it's just a regression to Watson's mean, this Cleveland team is scary. I think that it's going to be, like in the AFC North when all these teams are playing with each other, I think it could be a really possible case that all of these teams end up splitting games with each other. Like they're just that competitive and they're that talented. But if Watson plays even his average season in Houston, this Cleveland team is going to be hard to beat. It's hard to find weaknesses on the roster.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a pretty logical stopping point. I don't really think it's overly important that we talk about. I mean, it goes without saying. Owosu Koromoa, one of the most talented linebackers in terms of just physical skill set. We're going to see where he goes with it, but again, working with a lot around him, so hopefully he kind of develops into the playmaker that we all know he can become. And Anthony Walker he's a very respectable kind of off-ball backer that can get physical when he wants to. He's relatively sticky in the pass game. There's a lot to like even on the second level of the defense. This isn't necessarily their bread and butter, but these guys are going to get it done, you know. And again, we're talking about guys like Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill. At the end of the day, these guys, they make your front seven play a lot better from a linebacking perspective because they can get upfield. And if you're going to see this 100%. Cleveland team if they're gang tackling guys, that ball's coming out, man. I would not be surprised if this is one of the highest producing turnover defenses in the league this year. I wouldn't even mind a bet on them just leading the league in turnovers outright. So, very, very fun team to discuss. Maybe even more so than the Ravens if it weren't for just obviously the kind of deplorable human being that Deshaun Watson is, in my opinion. Like, it would be a great, very, very fun team to discuss. But either regardless, football mindset, super loaded roster that's going
Absolutely.
to threaten for the division outright this year. There's no denying that.
All right, moving on to Pittsburgh. I just want to say, off rip, not a big Pickett believer. Not sure how high
You're not
his
alone.
ceiling is. In fact, I think that this may be Mitch Trubisky's team by halfway through the season. I don't.
Trubisky.
This this could be Trubisky's team by week 8, week 9, especially if they're looking at, if the division is staying competitive, like we've been suggesting.
Steelers fans, don't leave yet. Just
Steelers fans,
all right?
Steelers fans, look away
Steelers fans, listen,
if you
can
must.
still listen, all right? It's fine. I'm gonna bring it back. Don't worry.
But yeah, not a huge believer in Pickett. I think that nothing to dog on him. Certainly he's talented. He's shown flashes. He is not a quarterback in a division, in a conference like the AFC and the AFC North that is going to put this team over the top. They have a lot going for them already, but just in general, I don't think that Pickett's going to be the guy that's going to put them over the top and be able to compete in this division.
Okay. Well, let's hold off on the Pickett discussion for a moment, right? Because I'll give you my kind of rebuttal on the Pickett take after we break down the personnel here, because I think that's actually the more important kind of. Until we know how we feel about the personnel, it's hard to really argue for or against Pickett.
Sure.
Pickett, in my opinion. So it's like, obviously we got Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. He's put together some decent little kind of mix-in runs. He seems to be a legit guy. I don't know what exactly you can expect of him if he ever has to play a significant role, but I mean he can at least contribute. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
McFarland, I know, got talked about a decent amount. Hasn't shown a whole lot. Hasn't had enough opportunities to show a whole lot. But that's really not what we're talking about, because, Najee Harris is a mainstay. I know that he has his share of detractors just because it was a bit of an underwhelming 2022 campaign. But what do you expect, right, with the kind of the line play the Steelers were fielding all year last year? They made it work, but it was never ideal, and I think any Pittsburgh Steeler fan can tell you that. Just look at the roster itself. I mean, so many new starters coming in here. We've got Broderick Jones, Isaac Samalo. So like these are new additions that are going to turn over the line. Just how good they can be is in question. I see this a lot as a I feel like I keep talking about the Seahawks too much, but really I liken it to the Seahawks prior year, where it's like they added Cross, they added Lucas, but there was still a lot of question marks outside of that within the line. So I have faith that Pittsburgh can show some like encouraging things on the line initially, but I'm not expecting them to just become anything better than league average at best this year, even despite how high I am on Broderick Jones. I really like Broderick Jones as a prospect, and I think Samalo was a very good contributor for Philly. I mean, we need to see him outside of Philly to really see what his true impact as a starter is, but that's a little bit interesting too. I like both of those additions. But really where the bread and butter for the Steelers here has got to be this receiving core. I mean, good
Definitely.
golly. I
know.
It's every team in this division, right? I mean,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
You talk about it.
Yeah, I love this wide receiver room that they've got here. Deontay Johnson, I think, is probably the most underrated aspect of this wide receiver room. That's going to be on an absolute tear. You still got a young guy in Calvin Austin too. George Pickens, the addition of Allen Robinson, and we talked a little bit about this before, but especially with Freiermuth and the addition of Darnell Washington, like they're big body tight ends that can that they'll win one-on-one balls, and they will also be able to do a lot in the run in the run protection game. But yeah, good golly. I mean, I don't know how exactly you can overlook this wide receiver room. I mean, Allen Robinson, George Pickens, and Deontay Johnson. George Pickens, we all seen the flashes that he's shown. He could ultimately be a true number one in this league. I think that's his ceiling.
No doubt about it.
And I think that maybe that's where my bit of Pickett slander comes from, is that it seems to me that can Pickett's ceiling match the talent that's in this wide receiver room? I think he certainly has more than enough people to throw to. I think him and Pickens grew a lot of chemistry, or at least more chemistry last year than they had. That can ultimately be a productive duo, but I will say, in any other division in the NFL, I think this is a really, really highly competitive team, and I think that this offense is a really, really competitive offense as it stands. I just think the biggest question mark being whether or not Pickett can make use of these weapons is a really big question mark for me, and I really would hate to see all of the talent in this wide receiver room go to waste. But ultimately, yeah, this is one of my favorite receiving cores, and as you and I can agree, we are big Deontay Johnson fans. I think that this receiver room has more than enough upside to be able to compete in the AFC. I just doubt whether or not Pickett can make use of it.
I mean, that's a fair assessment for sure. I mean, I liken Pickett's skill set to Jared Goff in a lot of ways. I feel that he's trying to play that mold of QB. He does threaten from the mobility standpoint a little more, which you like, but we're talking about pro-level athletes, and I'm not entirely sure his athleticism is anything more than just above average, truly. Where he is going to need to progress, like you're saying, is attacking downfield and accurately. I believe that the weapons he's set up to at least have a little bit of leeway when it comes to attacking downfield. As you discussed, Pickens has the upside and the physical skill set to be a number one in this league, and Deontay Johnson is a number one in this league. If you disagree with that, then fine by me, but he's if he's not a number one, then he's the best number two in the league, hands down. And just a complete destroyer of DBs. He'll break you down on the route. He can run every route. He's got ultra reliable, go up and get it, attacks the ball with his hands, right? He's not a body catcher in any regard. I know Deontay actually has had a little bit of drop issues, but I think people often overlook that many times where he has a drop, it's not all drop. Chris Sims says this a ton. Not all drops are made the same. Shout out to Chris Sims. Not all drops are made the same. If you drop the ball because you are simultaneously trying to catch back shoulder, turn your head and look where the DB is coming, and then hit a move as you land, this is what you see from Johnson. Every single time he drops, it's not a, I wasn't capable type of drop. It's a concentration drop. It's where I'm trying to make a move on the DB to get more yards after this catch. And you love to see that. You see it from a lot of guys. I think Metcalf gets criticized for that quite a bit as well. Guys like even A.T. Perry this year is a good one to bring up. I think it was mostly character concerns that he fell out of the higher rounds of the draft. But A.T. Perry is in that same mold where all of the drop issues that got criticized for Perry, and there was a little bit of that as well, I think it was mostly for that same reason. These are explosive guys that are looking for yak opportunities that we're talking about. But anyway, getting a little off topic there, more so I'm just saying you're right in terms of what he has around him. He has every reason to succeed, but as we know, protection is the obvious kind of counter to that argument. Is the protection has never been where it needs to be for Pickett, and it's hard to find any quarterbacks that don't have high-level protection early in their career that can produce, no matter what the talent is around them. I think generally, philosophically, the idea has always been built from the inside out. Many people believe that and subscribe to that. And I think defensively, sometimes it has been more reasonable to go with your DBs and your safeties and go from the secondary down. even though obviously like D-line plays is immensely important. But I would say on the offensive side of the ball, it's much less feasible to build your skill positions out a whole bunch and then do your line, because we're talking about, if you're talking about not plugging in a vet and doing like a rookie in his first or second year starting, whether he sits or not, there's not a lot of time for him to make mistakes and not a lot of time for him to use his limited processing to make the right play. And that's what I see from Pickett. I think it's just been a combination of rushed decision-making and lack of accuracy, frankly, on these deep balls. But the biggest factor to keep in mind, and you said it yourself, Pat Freiermuth and, health permitting, Darnell Washington bookending your line. It's a cliche at this point to say Darnell Washington is a sixth O-lineman on the field, but I mean, it's cliche because it's just a fact. Darnell Washington is going to contribute to making this Pittsburgh Steelers O-line formidable again, like we're used to seeing from them. And not to mention, he's another guy like Johnson that attacks the ball. He's not a body catcher. Pretty reliable hands to go along with Pat Freiermuth, who's these are both big-bodied, physical guys that can contribute just as well in the run game and the pass game together. And as far as blocking goes, man, I think you'll see Najee Harris have a wonderful third season for this team coming up, because you're just going to see pancake galore, in my opinion, on the edge runs, and we know they love to get Najee in space running off tackle. So, yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a good transition point to talk about the defense, where I think is where this team really does shine. I think that, not insane to think that this is a top 10 defense in the league, especially, they did lose Cam Sutton, but they did bring in Patrick Peterson, who is nothing but tried and true as a DB in this league. And not only that, but I think that, this defense is coming in healthy, and they've got, Witherspoon and Fitzpatrick. They all missed games last year, and I think that this defense, barring injury, this is a defense that has been a top 10 defense in previous years, and I think that in recent years, the defense is what has kept this team competitive. I love what they did in the draft too to build up this defense. I think bringing in Joey Porter Jr., absolute no-brainer, as well as Keanu Benton. I think that these are really, really phenomenal. These are really phenomenal additions to an already great defense. If there's one thing that the Steelers do have going for them, and that may override, my Pickett slander, is that defense is going to keep them in games. And if Pickett is even Jared Goff serviceable, like we've seen in Detroit, if he is Jared Goff serviceable, they will be put into positions where they can win games, without a doubt.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a little unfair to Goff. He has taken a step forward. We're not talking about the Lions at the end of the day.
I'm high on Jared Goff, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good comparable, though, right? Because we're talking about sort of early career Goff was able to do just enough with the surrounding talent. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Steelers are on the level of the Browns, like we discussed, where it seems like every starter, every depth player is a legit asset to the team and not so much a weakness. There are weaknesses in the Steeler lineup, but on the defense, it's a lot harder to find those weaknesses, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you said yourself, and I couldn't even keep my emotions inside when you mentioned Keanu Benton. I mean, could you dream up a better fit for Keanu Benton than the
match
Pittsburgh
made in
Steelers?
heaven?
Known to get a lot out of their D-tackle play. I think his skill set is very much like a Cam Hayward in the sense that he's going to have inside-outside versatility. It's pretty rare you'll see him on the edge, but in sort of like a hybrid 3-4 scheme that they like to run, like as just like even like a 3-tech or defensive end in the 3-4, like he's a good fit, but he can also play nose even potentially, and like as far as 5-tech, I mean, he can go all around this line, and having Hayward still there, although he is quite the elder statesman at this point, I mean, getting him in the same room as Benton right now is going to unlock all of the capability that's left in Benton's game. But we saw the impact that Benton had for Wisconsin. I believe that if they weren't the best, they were one of the best run defenses in college last year. And Benton was a big factor with Wisconsin. But yeah, my man crush on Keanu Benton aside, they're running a lot of other good players. They kind of gave a bag to Larry Ogunjobi not too long ago. At the time, I was like, I suppose it makes sense, but he stepped up and played pretty well for them. And obviously, it's like TJ. It's like similar to the Garrett Smith thing we talked about with the Browns. It's like it's good that they finally got a running mate for Watt, even though maybe Ogunjobi's not quite on the level of like a Zadarius Smith on his best day all the time. Maybe I'm a little low. Other people may disagree. I like Larry Ogunjobi as a player for the most part, though. The really interesting thing for the draft, though, I think we do need to talk about the draft a little bit, was these additions are big time to an already very talented unit like you're describing.
100%.
In terms
one of my
of
favorite drafts.
Yes, 100%. And it's health permitting. It's fair to critique a little bit of the injury concerns with this draft, but Herbig, the Nick Herbig, yeah, I'm not sure when they selected him, but I'll tell you, it was far too late because he's a great fit, sort of like a Watt-esque guy. He's gonna be stood up a lot. He can play with his hand in the dirt though. Just a fast, kind of powerful, bendy edge guy. Just another one to go along with what they got, and we cannot discount the addition of Joey Porter Jr., who I fully,
absolutely,
100% expect to start day one on this team. Don't say nothing to me about Akello Witherspoon. Don't say nothing to me about Levi Wallace. I like those players just fine, but they're not Joey Porter Jr., okay?
Right.
And it's fascinating, too, the addition of Patrick Peterson coming in. I mean, obviously he's getting to the end at this point, but he had a quite impressive season with the Vikings last year. He was one
Absolutely.
of the only mainstays for the secondary, and I know they weren't a good secondary by any means, but it's fair to say Peterson was a bright spot, and now he's getting brought in to sort of take Porter under his wing, so to speak, and I just think from a skill set perspective, he is a great complement to Porter. You've got the ultra physical, ultra competitive, in your face, mean Porter's play style to go with more of a finesse kind of heady vet game that Peterson's going to bring you. That along with Minka doing what Minka does.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
KZ's been a pretty underrated player. You'll know his name from the NFC South. KZ did some good things with the Falcons for a while, so I think he can be kind of their Von Bell, and you'll see Minka Fitzpatrick be the Jesse Bates for them this year, and they finally have the cornerback play to complement it all. I mean, talk about a very, very fun secondary to watch. This has to be, for my money, possibly the best secondary in the division. I think Cleveland is
think so.
Right there with them. I love Denzel Ward, which is making me hold back just a little bit on that point. But at the end of the day, how much more do you love Denzel Ward than Joey Porter compared to Minka Fitzpatrick and Grant Delpit? Right. I know they don't play the exact same roles, but Grant Delpit's a great player. I was high on him, but he's not Minka Fitzpatrick, man.
Right.
And Ward is like a great player in his own right, but I really do believe in Joey Porter to the point where, man, I think all the things Ward can do, Porter will be able to do in time.
100%.
And what he gives you year one might be enough to really bring this secondary over the top. I think I've
100%.
spoken enough, though. I mean, do you have any counters to the secondary?
No, I completely agree. I mean, just in general, I did want to touch a little bit more on their draft, which was one of my favorites of the year. They went out and got Broderick Jones, who, really, really great tackle prospect, shore up the line. We
kind of glossed over Broderick
Jones. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, but, one of the best tackle prospects in the class. And then, Got him at 14, really good, really good value. That's about where people could expect him to go. I saw him mocked as high as top 10 at one point. And then, the second round, just getting Joey Porter and Keanu Benton, followed in the third round by, Darnell Washington and then Herbig in the fourth. And even despite not having another pick until the seventh, where they got 2 picks, I like Corey Trice and Spencer Anderson a lot too. I think Corey Trice, ultimately being a 7th round pick, he could come into this team and contribute. Loved the draft. I loved what they had. What they had to offer, and got really, really good value from the second round on. And I think it's just going to continuously make that team better. And I think, especially under Mike Tomlin, they are certainly in a position where they can win football games. To me, it just comes down to whether or not Pickett's the guy to be able to do that. And I think that if he's got a good enough supporting cast, who's to say? Jared Goff had a great defense and was who he was in the early part of his career, and he rode that all the way to a Super Bowl. So
a
not
passable defense.
Not
he
to
was
say
carrying the load a lot more for them offensively this year, to be clear.
Not to say, by the way, that the Steelers are a Super Bowl contender. I do not think that that's the case.
No, I think it's important that we do kind of limit our expectation a tad for early returns. That being said, they clearly know the style of play they want to do, because all of these additions have really pointed toward a run-focused team that's going to get the ball out of the offense's hands on defense and limit yards overall. It's a great formula to win, man. This is one of those divisions where you could feasibly see 3 playoff teams coming out. And if Cleveland weren't so damn loaded, this might be the team that I'd point toward to be maybe that 3rd playoff team. So hang in there, Pittsburgh fans. It's turning around for you.
Agreed. Bright
so
future.
yeah, that's fun. That's a fun team. It's just a very fun division. I think this is going to be one of those divisions where I'm going to be trying to tune in every Sunday when I see these divisional matchups, because, man, it's just going to be some fun, high-flying, impacting football. Like, they're just going to be hitting each other in this division, man. There's some serious defensive talent here we're talking about. Obviously, the offenses are interesting and pretty top-heavy in some regard, but that's a good transition point, Ryan. This is kind of how we're going to end off these episodes. We're going to be going division by division, so to all of you new listeners, get ready, because we are going to bring weekly content to you where we're going to be talking about the overall divisions, the state of the rosters, weaknesses, strengths, all of that. And at the end, we get to the part where we decide who are we going to predict takes the division. Ryan, I'll let you kick it off. Who you think takes this division, and I'll go after.
Gun to my head, life on the line. Give me the Bengals. I think it's still Joe Burrow's division. I think that he still comes into town and he cleans up. If there's any team that I think has a chance of sweeping 2 of these opponents, I think it's the Bengals. I think that we know what Joe Burrow can do. We know what that wide receiver group can do. To me, it just comes down to the question of, if that secondary can hold up late in the season, and if they're making a deep playoff run, which I suspect that they will. To me, that they're legit contenders. I still see Cincinnati as coming out on top in winning the AFC North.
Okay.
How about
Notice,
you, my
folks? Right. Notice, folks, that he said if any team sweeps 2 of the teams in this division, it's got to be the Bengals. We know which teams he's talking about. All right. Cleveland and Pittsburgh, as much as we had glowing praise for those 2 rosters, those are the teams in question that could be subject to sweeps from a team as quality as the Bengals. But I'm going to be the kind of opposition with this viewpoint. I'm taking the Ravens. At the end of the day, I think everything we discussed with the secondaries particularly is very impactful for the outcome of this division overall. At the end of the day, I really love DJ Turner as a prospect. I like Jordan Battle as a prospect, but it's not really going to turn into an equal, so to speak, for what Bates and Bell brought. And I think that the Bengals' losses are unfortunately going to be a little more than they're able to overcome for this season in terms of getting the division under their belt. So do I think the Bengals don't make playoffs? Absolutely not. I think the Bengals are going to be a fantastic team this year, even without their mainstays at safety, and they're going to figure it out to some degree. But everything we said, you look at the Ravens secondary, they already got Humphrey in there. They're going to bring in Rock Ya-Sin, get decent production out of him. And I just think year 2 Roquan Smith in this scheme, man, they didn't give up all those assets for no reason. They're finally back with a offensive scheme built around the pass game as it should be. Lamar is a quality passer, despite all the people that say he's a running back. And he's got his contract under his belt. He doesn't have anything to worry about now from a playing standpoint. I think he's going to come out and let it rip. I know that Odell and Zay and all those guys are stoked out of their minds to get in and start playing. And, yeah, for my money, give me the Ravens. I think it's going to be close. I think they might even trade wins and losses between their divisional matchups, them and the Bengals this year. But at the end of the day, I think the Ravens are from top to bottom just a little bit above the Bengals this year. And we'll see how it plays out.
We will see how it plays out. My friend, it was a pleasure. Can't wait to speak with you again next week. And to all of our listeners, thank you. And not sure which division we'll be doing next, but keep a lookout on our socials at RumberPod, and we will make an announcement as to what division we'll do next. And have any particular questions, feel free to shoot us a DM or anything. Thank you for listening.
RumberPod everywhere. All the socials, baby.
Rumbler Nation. Where are my Rumblers
Rumbler Nation. Get up in our follows. Send us a DM. I do believe we're going the traditional north, south, east, west route. Mm-hmm. So
NFC North
or AFC North.
Oh,
so we're gonna stick with the AFC to start. So we're gonna go AFC South next, which is a lot different of a division in comparison to the one we talked about today, but still some fun things to talk about. Actually quite fitting they were talking about it so early, considering all of the interesting quarterback additions that entered into that division and everything. But it's been a pleasure. Appreciate everyone to tune in for episode 1. We're really looking forward to doing this and pumping out good content for you guys, pushing ourselves in terms of our ability to understand the game. Once we get through kind of these divisional breakdowns, you're going to see a lot of short form content and different things. You're going to see some more unique individual breakdowns. We love to talk about individual player impact and things along that line. So stay tuned, everybody. Appreciate giving us a chance.
Godspeed. Be well, everybody. Catch you next week, Spencer.
This is Rumblers.